The recording does capture webcams. It does capture anything that you add into the chat. So I just wanted to be upfront about that before we start. So the recording is officially running. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera just to make sure that everything stays nice and steady. But again, we are now recording the session. I want to do just some the course really quickly so that you have some idea on expectations and things like that, because we've gotten a lot of the same questions as we've run this. I think this is now our 7th or 8th cohort. So first, there are no deliverables associated with this course. Usually in the academy, there is some sort of deliverable or weekly activity, some sort of cumulative activity, and that is not the case here. We want to be very mindful of your time and give you a chance to just sort of absorb the content at your own pace. And so as a result, there are no requirements for passing this course. There's no way to pass this course because there are no grades. So, it's ungrading on steroids. If you do have any questions, we do have a raise your hand forum in here. We encourage you to think about hopping in there and posting any questions that you have, even on the webinars like these, which we'll have every week. If you happen to have a question, I'll sometimes bounce it back to you and ask you to also post it in the forum. That way, when we answer it, everyone gets to see not only your great question, but the answer to that great question, and a nice bit of knowledge sharing there. We are going to meet once a week for 3 weeks. There are 2 options for meeting each week, and I want to be really clear on this because some poor person attended 4 sessions in a row before realizing this. We are covering the same content Tuesday and Thursday each week. So there's going to be a Thursday morning version of this session where I'm covering exactly what I'm covering now. So you really just have to pick one, whichever works best for your schedule. And if you want to change week to week, that's totally okay. And wish to confirm the AI chat GPT session at noon tomorrow. Yes, that is going to be noon tomorrow Eastern Standard Time. So it's really for this particular class, whether you want to come on Tuesday or Thursday, whatever works your schedule. Thursday is a morning session. Tuesday is an afternoon session. It's just whatever works best for you. And then we'll meet once a week, and you can change as you go along. We have some folks who have meetings on Tuesday, so they need to switch to Thursday. Totally fine by us. The webinar connection information is going to be listed at the top of the course. So if you ever need to refer back to that, please do. I want to put a point on this. The link that you're using now to join this session is the same every Tuesday. There is a separate link to join every Thursday. So if you do need to switch days between weeks, it is going to be a different link. But next week, if you're still coming back on Tuesday, use the exact same link. Okay, all that's going to be included in our webinar connection information at the top of the course. We've got our raise your hand forum there as well. These webinars are being recorded. I've got a playlist set up here. Right now, if you tried to look at it, would say, hey, the video is not done being processed. That's because there's no video. I've just pre-embedded the playlist. I'm going to add everything into that, and that way you only have to go to one spot and remember one link. Everything will be added in as a playlist. If you haven't interacted with an embedded YouTube playlist before, which is totally okay, we've got a little image in there just to show you how the interface works. That course structure and timeline I was just talking about, that's all in there as well. And we do have the opportunity here for you to create your own practice course. This is just a quick little submission form. This would give you a course with instructor level access on our site that is running 4.0. So if you have not had a chance to really experiment with 4.0 from the instructor perspective, please do consider requesting a practice course. I went through and I cleared out all the requests about half an hour ago. So if you've requested after that point, it'll be something I'll have to take a look at a little bit later today because we do have to approve those by hand. But we're approving everybody, no worries. We're not going to say, no, you can't have one. And we do keep the courses on there for as long as possible. So usually we don't delete courses until they haven't been used for about 6 to 12 months. So if you start pre-building a course here and you want to export that to a backup and then restore it to your site in several months when you upgrade to 4.0 or 4.1, you are welcome to do that as well. The way this course is structured in terms of content is we're going to be taking like a top level view and then gradually narrowing and focusing our content down. So this week we're going to start talking about site-wide UX and the user experience, user interface changes. Next week, we'll dig in more to what has changed at the course level, especially if you're changing themes or if you're already on Boost or let's say Forza and you're moving over to the newer version of Boost or Learner. Those changes can be pretty strong. If you're using Snap, and you're staying on Snap, you won't notice many changes. Totally okay. So that's a little bit of an easier transition at the moment. But if you are, again, moving to the new version of Boost or Learner, there will be a shift. So we'll talk about what that looks like at the course level, and I'm going to talk about the site level as well. And then the third week digs really into some of the activity level changes. So getting into the minutia of things that have changed. Don't get me wrong, I am excited about this week, but I'm really excited about next week in particular, because if the theme had not changed so much, I think the marquee feature we would all be talking about is how much better the course question bank is in 4.0. Remarkably useful at this point. Like, there were a lot of great features in there that were added into the question bank that make it significantly better. And I'm really excited to share those with you next week. So I'm going to restrain myself from even giving you a preview. It's very good stuff. And again, if the theme weren't changing so much, that's what we would be talking about in this update. We would be talking about how great the question bank is. Before I get into any of the major changes, I want to say one thing like really clearly and put a fine point on it, and I'll probably say this several times, and that is that virtually nothing has been removed in this upgrade. So nothing's been taken away, nothing's been removed, nothing's been deleted. All the same features are there, but as you can tell from the theme, there has been some rearranging. I sort of liken this change to when you finally get fed up with your kitchen, you're like, I'm just going to rearrange the whole thing. And as you start to use it, you're like, wait, I keep going back to the wrong cabinet to get the plates. I keep going to the wrong drawer to get the silverware. And it's because you're retraining that muscle memory that you've developed over months or years of practice. And it will get better. And eventually, like 2 weeks after you rearrange your kitchen, you're like, this is so much nicer. This is so much better the way that I did it now. So I started working with 4.0 back in early fall, late summer. And it was an adjustment. It took me about a week or two to really start to remember where I needed to go for things. But ever since then, it's been so much faster to build. And the way that some things have been moved around just makes so much sense that it's kind of like, it's almost frustrating that it wasn't like that before, if that makes any sense. So I promise this is a good upgrade. It's a really good upgrade. There will be some muscle memory retraining, but once you get there, I think you're really going to like what you see. So we do have some content in here related to site-wide changes. I will let you go through that on your own. It's mostly a rehash of what we're going to talk about in this session, but I want to demo a couple of things for you here. Before we get into like the really big site-wide changes, I just want to mention one thing in particular that dips into the content for next week about those course level changes, because you may notice this course is set up a little bit differently than you might have seen in the past, and that's because of the changes to Boost. So there are two things in particular in here that I think you might like. The first is all the sections are collapsible by default, so I can collapse those. So I can just expand the ones that I need, makes it a little bit easier to get to things. The other thing that I find to be really, really nice about this, and we'll go into some of the extra features of this. Right now, I'm just going to keep it kind of top level, is on most sites, you have a navigation drawer on the left. Snap, it tends to be up in the right-hand corner, but most themes like Boost, Classic, Forward Send, those have a navigation drawer over on the left. And if we're being honest, that navigation drawer has way too much stuff in it. Right? It has course level links like content bank and the participants page and your grade book. It has site level links like dashboard and calendar. If you're an admin, it has the link to site administration, of course, at the very bottom of the menu where it's really hard to get to and you have to expand the thing and scroll all the way down. And then you have course level links, right? You have your topic level links within each course. And that is too much stuff, if we're being honest. So that's been redistributed a bit in 4.0. Those site level links, like, site administration or dashboard, things like that, those have been moved to the navigation bar at the top. If you're looking for stuff like calendar, personal files, your own personal grades, things like that, that's still in the user menu in the top right. Most of those course level settings have been moved to the settings bar at the top of each course. So if you're an instructor, that's where most of those things have gone, like your content bank links, your participants, your grades, those are all at the top. In fact, you have some cool new additions, like one-click access to all of your course level reports now instead of having to go through a couple of menus. So there's some nice things in there. And what that means is that navigation drawer now just has course content in it. And it's expanded its functionality a bit. We'll talk a little bit more about what it can do next week. but this is an expandable, interactive table of contents for the course. It lists every last piece of course content, resources, activities, all those good things. They could do some cool stuff that we'll look at on another site here in a moment. But I bring that up because this expandable menu over on the left is one way that you might navigate this course. So I wanted to mention it early, even though this is technically content for next week. I'll save some of the other course level changes for next week. I don't want to eat too much into that content, but from a navigational standpoint, I did want you to know that this course index is a relatively new feature. I find it to be much more useful. I love to expand and collapse these menus, and there's some really cool stuff that you can do with it that we will take a look at next week. All right. So let's talk about some of those site-wide changes. And we have a mix of administrators and instructors in this call. So I'll occasionally mention something that's possible from the admin side, but we may not go super far in depth because I don't want to get too granular, especially just trying to respect the fact that some of you are instructors and you may not be as interested in those things. When someone logs into your site, there were previously two options in terms of where they went after they authenticated and proved that they were who they said they were. Those options were site home and then dashboard. So site home does look a little bit different in this version. You will see just some modest visual changes here, but this is still where courses can be displayed. You can change how they're displayed. And the folks who use site home as their landing page when you log in, it's usually because the admin wants to be able to quickly share new information or news with every user on the site. And having a landing page that you can easily customize and quickly add new content to is very advantageous. So site home has not changed too much aside from the interface overall, especially if you're sticking with Boost or Learner, which Learner looks exactly like Boost. It's just a little bit wider and it has a couple of like little augmentations. So they look very, very similar. They're not radically different themes. So some elements of the interface have changed as on the admin side. Your edit mode is now a toggle in the top right corner. You can still have blocks on this page. Those will be nested in the block drawer. We'll go more into that next week, but it's just a little expandable drawer, sort of like that course index when we were in the course. And site home, still relatively the same. Mostly the same. It'll have some visual changes because of the theme, but the functionality has largely remained the same. Another option that sometimes folks use is the dashboard, so the site dashboard. Now, on the Academy site, we use IntelliCart, so our dashboard looks a little bit more like you might see a corporate client or corporate training type of environment because some people purchase seats for our courses. So it looks more like a storefront than an academic platform. So I'm actually going to take you over to a site that we use for testing internally. So when you see some things with the theme and you're like, hey, that padding doesn't look very good, it's because we're doing a bit of experimentation. So this is not like a final form. I just wanted you to be able to see a dashboard. So this is an example of dashboard in 4.0. This is also running the same theme, just a different preset. So there are some presets that we can create that you can rapidly switch through to kind of change the look and feel of your site very quickly. But the dashboard is fundamentally still 3 blocks, but one of them has received some significant revision and I think is way more useful. So the first is you got the timeline block here, and this will list all of the upcoming events that are due for a learner. This can also list things out for the instructor. So if you have a quiz that closes soon, that would show up here. I can also play around with this timeline a bit. So I can see like, oh, if I'm a learner, what's overdue? What did I miss? Nothing, because I'm such a great student. But if I did have anything overdue in here, I would be all set. So let's see. I think I have some very generous deadlines here. This one's not due until Christmas. This one's not due until April 12th of next year. So I'm in pretty good shape with my assignments and assessments right here. But what I like about this is it not only tells you what the activity is and what the event is. So this is a quiz and it's telling me that the quiz is closing on that date and time. I can see the name of the course, but there's a button that'll take me straight to that thing. So it's not just taking me to the course, it's taking me straight to the activity so that I can begin attempting that quiz or starting that lesson or creating that assignment submission. I find this to be really, really helpful. One thing that I also really love about this is you can search by activity type or name. So, let's say I know I have a forum coming up. So I'm just going to search for forums. And here's my English 101 writing forum. So it's just a nice little filter here. I can also look for, I think I want to say, I have something for biology in here. Let me search for bio. No, I was wrong. Let's see. Oh, these were all for English 101. Let's look for differentiation. I don't even have to type the whole word. There's my differentiation lesson. So it's a very, very functional block for learners, especially when they're trying to figure out what's due, what am I looking for. I notice if you're an instructor, you might be thinking like, oh, this is more for students. But if you make this something that you really reinforce with your students, like if you're looking for stuff, this is one really valuable tool to help you be successful, right? So this is something I always love to mention to students. You can even have it sorted by different way. Like I could group this by course. Right now, all of my stuff is for the same course, but it'll group it together. So if I'm in multiple courses that have multiple deadlines that have been set through the activities themselves, those will show up here, which I find to be really, really helpful. Calendar is the second block that shows up on the dashboard. Has not changed too much in 4.0. Still pretty much the calendar. You can have your own personal level events. You can have course level events. You can have site level events. So you can see like we have a calendar that's been subscribed for this entire site that would pull in holidays as an example. But we also have individual course level events in here that we can access. Finally, we've got the course overview block, and this has seen some revision in 4.0. This is probably my favorite block, especially when it comes to like front level pages. And if you are a learner, if you are an instructor, this is, to me, one of the most functional things on the site in terms of helping you organize and manage where your courses are. So there are a couple of different things in here I want to point out. So I can change the display right now. This is a card level display. So it's showing me, the name of the course, the category that it's in, and how complete it is if completion's been enabled and set up. I prefer the card style interface, but I could change this over to a list style interface instead. Still pretty visual, but I feel like there's a bit of missed space in there, so I tend to like the cards. You can also use the summary version, which I like overall, but if you include a description of the course, it shows the whole description, and so you can see like that 101 course is definitely taking up a lot of real estate here. So my personal preference is I really like that card interface. It's very straightforward. You can sort these by last accessed or course name. So last access can have some advantages, especially if you're an instructor who's enrolled in a lot of courses, right? So just show you the ones that you've been using recently, or, if you're a learner, you can sort those by course name, have everything sorted out that way. You can also search for your courses, which I really love. So I'll just search for bio and should pull up my biology 101 course there. So if I can't find a course for some reason, if I've used some of the filters that are available in this block and I can't find my courses still, I can always search for it using some really simple terms. I try not to overcomplicate search terms in this particular block because, if I put something that's not in the name, it might not show up. So, if I search for bio, I get my biology 101 course. And I can filter this in a lot of different ways. Now, if you've been using the dashboard for a while on your site, you're probably familiar with some of those filters. So, I have my in progress, my future, my past. Those are all controlled by the course open and close dates, right? But there's a really cool new feature in here that I like. So on the admin side, you previously could create special profile fields for individual users, like for your accounts. So, some folks use the special profile fields. I worked with one client who wanted students to have a profile field to enter in which residence hall they were living in on campus so that they could run reports for learners in specific residential neighborhoods. So you can create special profile fields. You could always do that. Now you can do the same thing, but for courses. So you can create custom profile fields for courses. And on this site, we created one, this is just a test site. We created one called course style. And it was just, is the course face-to-face? Is it blended? What are the options? So we've got, traditional face-to-face, blended, fully online, or nothing. There's just no style selected for that particular course. And if you have custom course fields like this, you can actually, as the administrator, select one to serve as an additional filter in this course overview block. So let's say we were using that course profile field to say, which semester is this course being taught in? We could then set that as a filter, and then our users would have the opportunity to filter by just spring 2023 courses as an example. So if I were to say, okay, I'm going to select blended, and I know some folks, I've had some eagle-eyed folks in sessions who are like, where's the traditional option? No courses have been selected for traditional with that profile field that we were just looking at, which is why it doesn't show up in the menu. So for my account, for the courses that I'm enrolled in, none of them are marked as traditional courses, so the filter doesn't show up. So I don't end up confused when I select it. Nothing shows up. I'm going to go ahead and pick blended here, and it'll filter to just the courses that have been indicated as blended courses in that course setting profile field. And that's just on the regular course settings page. So this is something that's really, really cool. I like it quite a bit. This is probably my favorite block site-wide. There's some really cool ones out there, but this one's just highly functional. I know sometimes, especially instructors can report that it can be challenging to find courses when you're enrolled in dozens and dozens and you've been teaching at the same place for a while. So I think this is a really nice way to help manage some of that. And of course, those previous options, like you'll still have the option to star or archive a course. Archive just hides it from view. And there are, of course, filters to show just your starred courses or your hidden courses. So if you want to make a custom view, that's another option. Those have been there for a while, but again, nothing's been taken away. So I want to point out those do still exist there. In 4.0, however, we have a new third landing page option. It's called My Courses. And the My Courses block is just the course overview block. In fact, on the dashboard, I mean, you could customize the dashboard page. You can add additional blocks to this. Some folks add HTML blocks so that they can share news or resources with their users. But My Courses is just the course overview block. So when you log in, like you could be taken just here. This tends to be more popular with folks who are either teaching in K-12 environments or who are teaching in corporate training environments, because it is the fastest way to get your learners from login to learning, is how I say it. So when they log in, they come straight to this page. Here's their courses shown in a way that makes most sense to them. And they are the ones who basically like pick where they're going next. So this is the quickest way to get to log into learning. Since you cannot customize this page like you can with home or dashboard to add additional features or push out information, it may not be as popular with administrators, but I like to let folks know that this exists, because on most sites, especially with authentication, usually, if I bookmark a link to this page as an instructor or as a student, and I go to this page, but I'm not logged in, it'll prompt me to log in and it'll take me back to this page. So being able to use that as like a bookmark in my browser might actually be pretty advantageous. So I'm very fond of this because it's just the course overview block. It's my favorite block. So I just wanted you all to know that this is another one of those things that is available there. All right. Before we go into some of the other site level changes, are there any questions that have come up as we've been moving through that I could be helpful with? All right, Vanessa, I saw a hand go up.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Great. Okay, yes. So I've heard you mention the Boost theme quite a bit, but there's been no mention of Snap. So has Snap totally gone away, or is Snap just been untouched and it still will function the way it functions?
Yep. I touched on that a bit at the very beginning. My apologies. So Snap will not see many major visual changes in this update. There'll be a couple of small augmentations. For example, there are certain activity completion labels that are available in this version that will show up in Snap. But otherwise, Snap is largely remaining the same. So you don't have to worry too much about that. There are some resources in here to talk about like what's going to be new in those particular themes. So that'll be in there. But again, since Snap has not really changed that much, a lot of the focus has been on what is Boost going to look like if you're moving over to Boost.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And in terms of some other site level changes, there are some overall user experience changes that might be a little bit more applicable to admins. So it's just something to share. first off, the footer has sort of evolved into this question mark icon down here. So it's a popover menu now. The reason that I bring this up is there's a new site support feature. So you can designate someone as your site support contact. If you don't include a site support website in here, what's going to happen is you will instead have this form that appears when your users click on that link. So when anyone on the site clicks on that link, they can open up this form that'll be generated automatically, and it will email whoever the site support contact is. Usually it's the admin. So whoever the admin is, it'll generate that email and send it to them. What I would recommend doing is after upgrading to 4.0, update that link in site administration settings to whatever your support site link is. The reason I say that is we did have one client who someone just used the forum to open the or send in a message with like a phishing scam to say like, hey, you know, like we were in your computer, we've got your photos, you were doing some inappropriate stuff, and if you don't give us 14 Bitcoin, like we're going to delete your site. And obviously it was complete nonsense. It was just a typical emotional play that you get with phishing, where they're trying to make you feel like you're compromised and trick you into making a bad decision. But again, this form is going to go to whoever the support site contact is. So I usually like to just swap it out with whatever your support website actually is that goes to your ticketing system, or you know, your support system, whatever that happens to be. Ours links out to the support site for OpenLMS clients as an example, where you can open a ticket, or if you log in, you can search through our knowledge base. So that's just something to mention there. Another thing that I like to bring up is if you're an admin, you may have created a user tour before. The user tours have seen some nice updates in this. So you can actually create your steps with the Addo text editor, which means you can incorporate images, you can incorporate embed video much easier now. You used to have to use a kind of an odd workaround, but now it's actually a built-in core feature. So you can build that into your user tour steps. There is another admin feature, but it's a little bit more admin heavy. I don't know what the current mix is in terms of folks who are instructors versus administrators on the call. There's a little like raise your hand button at the bottom of the screen. It should be the fourth button from the left. Actually, it's pretty close to the middle. Would you just do me a favor and click that button if you're an administrator? Okay, so I'm seeing 2 admins. I'm guessing everyone else is probably an instructor. If that's the case, I can hang on to that information toward the end of the call, and then everyone else can hop out, and we can kind of go from there. But while we're at a quick little pausing point, are there any other questions that have come up that I can be helpful with offhand? And Tanya, I didn't know if the hand up was for the question or from like the admin thing a minute ago. Okay, perfect. All right. Oh, accidentally muted myself. Love when that happens. All right. One of the other things I like to point out is that, again, this is not so much a change. This is more a semantic change, but it's something that I would encourage folks to be aware of. We've seen the HTML block used quite a bit in courses before, and even on site home, on the dashboard to share information with others. And the HTML block is really just a rich text block. And one thing that I want to point out, because my worry is that folks will look for it and it won't be there, and it'll look like it was removed, and this is a really big part of our workflow. What happened? It was renamed. So if you use the HTML block, which is just a block that lets you add rich text into a course or a site page, that has now been renamed to the text block. We'll go a little bit more in what the block drawer looks like next week. I managed to break it with yeah, I did. Okay. This is what happens when I zoom to like 225%. So we'll look at the block drawer a little bit more next week. There's some really cool stuff in there. I just don't want to overwhelm by going too far in depth with things right now. But if you do use the HTML block in your course, I've seen folks use this for course resources, like here's the course text, here's the external website we're using. I've seen instructors use it for a bio of themselves, along with like a headshot and how to contact them if they need, office hours, stuff like that. So I've seen those HTML blocks used in a lot of different ways. And I just want to reiterate, those have not been taken away. They're just called the text block now instead of the HTML block. You'll actually see a similar semantic change happen in 4.1 when the label resource is renamed to, I want to say it's like text and media or something like that. It's on the tip of my brain. I can't remember the exact name, but label has been renamed in 4.1. So you'll see some of those little semantic changes where it looks like something has been taken away, but really it just has a new name or a new place. So those are some of the top level themes or changes in terms of like theme, user experience, what you can expect, features and functions as well. If you are an instructor, I would say please feel welcome to hop off. I was going to show an admin level feature that may not be as interesting to you, and totally no harm, no foul. I'll just say if you come up with any questions in the meantime, please do pop those in the raise your hand forum. Otherwise, if you do want a practice course, you can always request that as well in the course essentials section. So again, if you are an instructor and not an admin, this next part may not be as interesting to you. So I just wanted to share that ahead of time. But I thought the admins might enjoy learning about this. There are, trying to debate which site I want to do this on. One thing that you'll gain access to as an administrator in 4.0, and I'm going to preemptively say that this is much more useful in 4.1, but 4.0 is a good place to learn to use it, is there is a new report builder in site administration. So if I head over to site administration, there's the reports tab. And at the bottom, I have this handy new report builder where I can build my own custom reports. Again, in 4.1, I find this to be much more useful because you have additional data sources that let you do even more. But if you are frequently asked for information from a department chair or a dean that says like, I want to know how many of my instructors have logged in the past week, right? You could easily create a report like that, generate it to be a recurring report that runs on, let's say, a weekly basis, and is automatically emailed out to specific groups. Or it could be an ad hoc report, which means whenever you look at, that's when it runs. There will be more information about using this in the self-paced training courses that will be added to your site for the upgrade, and we'll actually make those available in week 3 of the course. And I think I have the orientation for admins here. Yep, had it open in a new tab. So there's information about how to use the report builder that'll be made available to you in the self-paced courses. So you will have access to that information. But essentially what you do when you create a new report is you'll select a report source. You can only do this once. You cannot change it after you start creating the report, so keep that in mind. Let's say I want to know about user logins in the past 7 days. So I'll select users as my report source, and we'll call this user login over past 7 days. You can tell I've used this before, so I don't want to call something the same name. And it'll generate a report with just some standard fields in here. I've got the zoom turned up quite a bit. So the way this works is these are the fields that I can add to my report. These are the fields that already are on my report. I don't want to scroll too far over because I don't want to give away people's email addresses. But I can add in new things like, if they have a picture, I can add that in there. If they have an email address, I can add that in there. If I want to know which department they're in, right? I could add department onto there. So I have control over what columns show up on my report. I can then create conditions, filters, and choose how that information is sorted. So if I am looking at conditions, I could say, by default, it's going to pull whatever columns I happen to have. But let's say I want my condition to be department. So I'll delete all these other ones. We don't need the other ones. In this instance, the chair of the English department has reached out to me and said, hey, I want to know what all the English faculty, like if they've logged in the past 7 days. So I can just, let's say EMG is the department code. I can apply that and it'll show me everyone with that. No one on this site has that, by the way. That's why there's no results. but this is the condition that you can create there. I can also further filter the results. So it could be something like, what's another good example? Trying to think of a good example offhand, and of course I'm going blank, but this would let you further filter the results. So maybe it is something like, if you have multiple campuses, maybe you manage that through the institution field. Maybe you have an additional profile field or something for that. So, if you have satellite campuses, you could create an institution field for all the folks who are at main campus, right? So that just further filters the data out so that you can have it be a bit more specific. And then you can choose how that information is sorted. And you can actually have multiple sorts. In this case, it would sort by full name, then username. So you can have multiple information for sorting. And you can also change how this is displayed when you run the report on an ad hoc basis. But if I want to take this a step further, by the way, you can see like this is all pretty straightforward stuff. This is like basically no more complicated than Amazon search, if you want to think of it that way, because we're selecting what do we want on this report, right? Just clicking to add things. We can rearrange if we need to. And then under what conditions should information show up, and should that information be filtered? How do I want to sort it, right? Like if we're talking about Amazon searches, price, high to low, right? Conditions, which departments do you want those things in? Filters, only show me stuff that's prime shipping. So these are relatively straightforward features. You can then set an audience in here. So maybe I can get someone who has an assigned system role, or I can just manually say like this person who happens to be the chair of the English department. And that means I can reuse this report in the future, or if there's a new chair. I can just take out the old person, move in the new person, and we're all set. I can set up a schedule that automatically sends this report to them, along with a message that I can pre-populate. It says, hey, by the way, just as a reminder, this is that report you asked for that shows all the English faculty who've logged in the past 7 days. I can say when it starts. I can choose the recurrence and how often it comes out. I can even choose how that information is provided. Like I could have it show up as a PDF or a CSV or something like that. And I do get control over how people can access that information, but I need to create an audience first. So this is a relatively straightforward builder. I know it probably seems like a lot because I went through it in all of 3 minutes, but the more time you spend with it, the more you realize like this is actually pretty straightforward. It's this step to add the columns, and then these steps to figure out how do I want that data to actually display, and what do I want to show up there. And then optionally, if you want to, you can set up audiences and schedules to have that report to send out to someone. Or if this is just for you, you don't even need those steps. You would just create your report. When you close out of it, it'll be listed in all of the reports that you create, and you can click to run it as an ad hoc task whenever you need. So you can just, like, if the chair only reaches out to you like once every couple of months, says like, hey, can you let me know about this? You can just click and run it. It'll run it immediately. May take a couple of minutes to load depending on the volume of data, but having access to this, being able to create your own reports is really, really nice. And again, in 4.1, which will be available in summer, there are significantly more report sources. So this is going to become even more useful over time, which is why even though there are only a handful of sources right now, just like cohorts, courses, users, and attendance, I still would encourage you to think about spending some time with it to learn the interface, so that as you become more familiar with it, and as this feature grows, you can start to get more and more out of it. And Vanessa, it looked like a hand went up.
Yes, and thinking about reports, so it was my understanding from some previous meetings we had that you guys would be actually bringing forth our census report into the new platform. And that may have something to do with a different side of the house, but I was just curious about the census report, because I know that that's the most, probably the most popular and most used across all colleges. So I would say that this is not where that would show up, or we wouldn't have to develop it, but you guys are going to bring that one forward. For us.
Is this for, you said you were using Snap on your site, right?
We're using Snap with the option of Boost, but our default is Snap. But I'm just thinking about the census report in general, and I know that there was a whole new reporting system that Open LMS was working on, and the census report was supposed to be like priority one, and I just hadn't heard anything back on that yet. So I guess, and I'm not sure if this is the venue or the
No, I
place.
can ask around.
But I am curious about where we're at with the prefabbed, delivered, if you will, census report.
My understanding is it's still coming, but would you be willing to do me a kindness and also post that in the raise your hand forum so that I have a record of it? That'll make it a little bit easier for me to flow it up to other folks and get final confirmation for you.
And when you say raise your hand forum, I see a chat. Are we talking, is that the same thing, or is there somewhere else I need to be looking for raise your hand at? Because I'm like, where's the raise your hand at?
This will be in the no worries. This would be in the course itself. So it'll be up near, I think it's in the course information section. Yeah. So we've got like this raise your hand forum near the top of our course. So if you post it in there, that I can loop in my supervisor to get final confirmation for you. My understanding is yes, and those are two different things. So you've got your SQL reports, and then this is like a new report builder that you could use as an admin to kind of create like what you see is what you get style reports. It's just a little bit more approachable because you don't have to write the code to run. All right. And I want to say, I'm trying to remember where this other thing was that I had mentioned earlier. It might be under users. And where? I'm looking for that support contact. And we're just going to search for it. I make sure that I give you, I figure while we're inside administration, I might as well point out where it is. Okay, so administration, server, it should be under there. And where is support contact? Second from the top. And I just completely missed it. But that is where you can add in your information like the support name, the support email, and a support page. If you don't put in a support page, it will create that form that I was showing you all earlier, where pretty much anyone could fill out that form and send a request to whoever is listed for support email. So wanted to mention that while we're back here. All right, we're up on time, so I just wanted to check and see, are there any final questions I could be helpful with? All right, I'm not seeing anything, so I'll go ahead and turn off the recording just so there's not a bunch of empty space at the end.